This is the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week and what's going on this week. I'm here with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And this week, we're going to forego a guest. We're not going to have a guest this week because we got a lot of playoff football to talk about, Dan. We got a full bracket, and we're ready to roll.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about that we're already here, but the postseason's here for all of our schools, Class 1A through 4A, and we've got a lot of teams in action, as we always do this time of year. So it's going to be fun talking about all of these playoff matchups and kind of looking at kind of forecasting kind of what we expect from some of these games and some of these teams, and it'll be a good time, I think, and we'll definitely have plenty to talk about. There's no question there.
All right, before we get going on tonight's show, we want to thank our primary sponsor, Capital Farm Credit, with offices all over Texas, including Stanford and Abilene. Buy your own slice of Texas with Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. And with that, before we get going on this week's playoff action, we're going to take a look at a couple of ball games. Dan, you were at the Wylie ball game against Wichita Falls. A big night for Wylie. Not only did they win 44-14, but they dedicate the stadium to one of the best coaches the big country's ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big night in a lot of different ways. This was their first home game, which is kind of crazy to think about. You're in November and you're finally getting your first home game. And they had to move homecoming to this game. And in addition to all of their homecoming festivities, it was kind of a week to honor Coach Hugh Sandifer and his wife, Brenda. They both went into the Hall of Honor together. They christened the new stadium. His name now is on that. It's Hugh Sandifer Stadium, and he's got a statue right out front. He welcomes fans into the stadium now. So it was fun getting to catch up with him. I was able to talk to him at halftime a little bit, and they really went all out to honor he and his wife and his family, and that was neat. And then on the field, the Bulldogs looked awesome. I mean, they played about as well as they have in a very long time. They were up 28-0 at halftime, increased that lead to 38-0. By the fourth quarter, didn't give up a point until inside 5 minutes to go in the game, and that was with some backups there on defense. They really, really looked good, and it was a big game for them because they had struggled quite a bit out at Wichita Falls Ryder in their first game in 28 days, and they kind of had some ring rust, and they were playing a really good opponent and kind of got it taken to them a little bit. But they bounced back really nicely against the Coyotes and really dominated the game. It was a big offensive game. They had over 470 total yards. They held Wichita Falls high to 8 rushing yards, sacking their quarterback about 9 times, forced 4 turnovers. It was just a complete domination and a good showing for Coach Clay Martin, and I think a good sign for that team going forward.
All right. Our Big Country Preps game of the week last week, I was on hand for that. I was down in San Saba. The Cisco Lobos playing for a district title against the Armadillos on the road. And I don't know how else to put this. A 48-6 win for Cisco. And I've been covering high school football for a long time, Dan, and we're talking about 2 top 10 teams here, okay? And I realized that San Saba was missing 3 starters. But this was just this was a rout in epic proportions. It's the best executed game, at least in a game of this caliber, the best executed game I've ever seen a high school football team have. The highest percentage of properly executed offensive plays were off the chart. There were only 2 or 3 plays that really blew up on Cisco. And normally, you're not going to get 90% production on every single, on all these plays, but that's really what it looked like. It was an extraordinary, it was a masterpiece. It really was in terms of execution. One thing I liked about this ball game is afterwards, Coach Andreas Aguirre of San Saba, after the ball game, offered no excuses. They took a whooping, and that's just the way it is. That's their approach. They're not going to make any excuses about this. They just want to go back, look at the game field, and get better. And that's how you do it. That's how you win championships, is by taking your whoopings when it's your turn. It was San Saba's turn last week.
Yeah, that was the thing that struck me as well in reading your game story was just Andreas Aguirre's response to that game. I mean, sometimes you have those types of games. You coach long enough, you're going to take a whooping like that sometimes. And I thought his response was really perfect. I think for a team that has high aspirations, that's what you want to hear from your coach. You say, look, we're going to deal with what happened. We're going to accept what happened. We're not going to make excuses for it, and we're going to get better. We're going to hope that we get another shot at Cisco down the road. And I think that's about the only way you can handle that type of loss. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Coach Stinnett and his group because that was a huge game really for both teams. I know that Cisco had that long streak on the line. A lot of people people, you and me both included, thought that San Saba had a really good shot at winning that game.
Yes.
And Cisco just made sure early that wasn't the case. And you got to give credit to the Lobos. That was one of the better games they've played all year long. You could tell they kind of came out on a mission to kind of make a statement in this game, and they did.
Yes. My theory of this, and I'm not looking at the three missing starters as the key. Cisco was missing a two-way starter as well. I'm not looking at this as a key. Cisco came out and hit them in the mouth right off the bat, gave them a 3-and-out, and then, had a long, drawn-out scoring drive to start the game. And from that point forward, San Saba was really back on its heels. They were facing a situation that they were really unaccustomed to. And that's how, if you're going to win championships and you're going to win regional titles and all that, these are the types of football games you just have to get used to. San Saba is relatively new on the block at this level. And, they're blowing people out every week. And then all of a sudden you get Cisco come in and hit you in the face and you're back on your heels a little bit. They just didn't respond as well as they're capable of in that ball game. It was really an extraordinary night for Cisco.
Yeah, in football, those kind of games happen sometimes. Maybe your game plan just isn't perfect for what they're running, and you get kind of punched in the mouth, and it takes you some time to adjust. And sometimes you can never make those adjustments. It's just those kind of games happen. Like I said, to every coach, to every team, if you're at this long enough. But I think the big thing is how you respond to it, because there is a good chance, or at least a chance, that these two teams will get another chance to play in the playoffs. These are two teams that have the capability of making the playoff run. And there's an opportunity that San Saba will get another shot at these guys, and they're going to want to make a better showing. So I think that like I said before, that they've responded the way you need to respond. Accept it, move on, get better, and make sure that you're better prepared the next time you play. So hopefully with that opportunity, I'd love to see a rematch of this game, because I think San Saba certainly believes that they're better than what they showed on Friday.
They are.
And
they
like that opportunity.
San Saba is better than what they showed. But Cisco's effort was so dominant that night. We're talking about more than 550 yards rushing against a San Saba team that is capable of going and really doing some postseason damage. And they hold them to 20 yards in total offense in the first half. That's well beyond 2 or 3 starters out. That's well beyond that. And a few reserves out. That's well beyond that. It's an extraordinary effort. Cisco looked so good that night that I think you have to start talking about them as a regional threat. Now, Post is the regional title is going to go through Post. You and I know that. If you're going to win this regional title, it's going to have to go through Post. But Cisco played so well that night that they look like a regional threat to me.
Yeah, and the one thing that no one can say about Cisco is that this team isn't battle-tested. This team's played about as difficult a schedule to get to this point as anybody in that classification and in that division. So Cisco is used to playing against really quality opponents, and they've showed really well, and this was their best performance yet. So I'm excited to see what the Cisco team can do going forward with the playoffs starting now.
I'm interested to see how San Saba learns from this, picks up the pieces, and moves forward and keeps improving. This is a good program. They run it right. They work extraordinarily hard. I've been there to see their workouts. They're going to be fine. Everybody takes a whooping every now and then. It was just their turn.
And with that, well, let's talk about one more game before we get going into the playoffs. We had another game that was just kind of a classic. It was one of those defensive slugfest games that turned out to be every bit as competitive as we thought it might be. And that was, of course, Hawley's 14-8 win over Forsan to claim the outright district title in District 3-2A Division I. Just a fantastic defensive football game. Forsan got out to an 8-0 lead. Hawley ties it, goes up 14-8, and then Forsan is driving to try to tie or take the lead and ends the game on the 6-inch line of the Hawley Bearcats. So just a really, really good football game. And kind of a weird one in that Forsan, because of positive points and because of tiebreaker rules, needed to win by 8 points to actually benefit, to actually get the number 1 seed. So Coach Phillips out there said that he was prepared, had they scored on that final play, to kneel it on the conversion and try to win by 8 in overtime. So it's just one of those kind of weird high school football things, but turned out to be a great game. You and I both thought it would be, because we've kind of been talking about this Forsan team all year long as being kind of that sleeper behind-the-scenes team that no one was really talking about as much as they should be. And they showed, I think, this past Friday that team is a threat. That team is a team you don't want to mess with in the playoffs.
Well, Forsan is going to. I mean, Forsan is dangerous, and they're going into this the playoffs. They haven't allowed more than 14 points in a game in a month. So, and they are San Saba's first opponent here in the playoffs. They're going to be hooking up on Friday at 7:30 p.m. in Wall, which that's going to be an interesting ball game because Forsan defensively they're going to bring it to you, and you're going to have to execute. So, San Saba coming off that tough loss to Cisco, facing this group. Forsan, we've been talking about them for weeks now, that they've been playing really well and that they are underrated. They've been playing a number of good ball clubs and giving them a go. They gave Anson all they wanted. They nearly beat Hawley. They still, to this day, they are McCamey's only loss this season. This is a dangerous football team, especially on the defensive end. And when they're playing so well defensively, they're only giving up 18 points a game. That puts the pressure on you, and you're almost automatically going to be in this situation where, one or two mistakes can get you beat. It would not be, Forsan doing damage in the postseason would not surprise me at all.
No. And obviously they have to get started, like you said, with an upset of San Saba in the first week. And that's when I think that San Saba is still a clear favorite in that game. But Forsan's a dangerous team, like you said. This is a team that if you don't come ready to play and prepared, they will hit you in the mouth. The one thing that the Buffaloes are going to have to clean up some, and it showed in this Hawley game, they had 4 turnovers in that one. You're going to have trouble beating good teams when you turn the ball over that many times. But yes, at the same time, to have a chance to win that game at the end – despite 4 turnovers, tells you the type of ability they have, because that's a good Hawley football team playing on their home field. Didn't do a whole lot of offensively all night, and Forsan was still almost able to win that despite 4 turnovers. So I think you and I both agree this Forsan team's dangerous, and San Saba is definitely going to have to take them seriously in their opening round playoff game.
All right, and with that, we're going to jump into playoff pairings for this week. We're going to start at the 6-man level, Region 1, 1A, Division 1. By district, we've got the Knox City Greyhounds going to be facing off with an O'Donnell ball club. That's going to be an interesting ball game. 7:30 p.m. Friday in Jayton, and that's the one team that we've got in Region 1, 1A, Division 1, Knox City.
Yeah, and moving to Region 2, 1A, Division 1, we've got a couple of games, 8-2 Ira against 9-1 Westbrook, which could be an interesting one. That one is at 7:30 Friday in Colorado City. And then the other game we've got is Hermley at 9-1 against top-ranked Sterling City, unbeaten this year, 7:30 p.m. Thursday in Robert Lee.
I like that Ira-Westbrook matchup. That's going to be a good one. Ira's playing really well, blew out Hermley, a good Hermley team, a couple of weeks back. And now they're going to be facing a Westbrook team that's in the top 10. So it's going to be fun to see what happens that night. Now we're going to jump over to Region 4, 1A, Division 1 by district. We've got May facing Erie and County, 9-1 against 9-1. That's going to be at 7:30 p.m. Friday at Robert Lee. And the Baird Bears, 5-5, going up against Water Valley, a sort of a perennial power, Dan, and 6-man, 7 p.m. Friday at beautiful Hornet Stadium in Blackwell. If you have not gone to see a 6-man football game, at Hornet Stadium in Blackwell, I invite you to go and do that. That is a first-rate facility. It ranks up there with anything that 6-man football has.
All right, dropping down to Division 2, we'll start in Region 2, which is jam-packed with area games. You've got Lorraine at 6-4 playing Balmorhea at 7-1. That is at 7:30 Thursday in Rankin. Jayton 9-1, Chillicothe 5-4, 7:30 p.m. Thursday in Knox City. Benjamin at 6-1 playing 7-2 Motley County, 7:30 Friday in Guthrie. And then Blackwell at 7-3 versus Sierra Blanca at 3-2, 3:30 p.m. That's a Saturday game in Garden City.
That is a long haul to Garden City for Sierra Blanca. Sierra Blanca is a long way from everywhere. That place is way out there. Having driven to Arizona, I've gone through there a few times. That is a haul. And with that, we're going to go to Region 3, 1A, Division 2 by district. We've got the Throckmorton Greyhounds, one of the storied programs. It's a 6-man level, 7-1, facing Trinidad at 4-6 at 7:30 p.m. Friday in Iredell. And then we've got the Strawn Greyhounds facing Walnut Springs. That's an interesting matchup, 6:30 p.m. Thursday in Hyco. Also, the Gordon Longhorns will be taking on Morgan. That's going to be 6:30 on Friday in Gorman. And finally, we got Luders of Oka taking on Fannondale. That's going to be 7 p.m. Friday in St. Joe.
And finally, in Region 4, Division 2, we've got a couple of games there. Brooksmith at 7-2, taking on Cherokee at 7-3. That one is at 6:30 p.m. Thursday in Zephyr. And then we've got Blanket 7-3 versus 8-0 Richland Springs at 7:30 Friday in Zephyr. So a couple of games out there in Zephyr, and some interesting matchups. I think there are quite a few in that six-man group that I think are really pretty intriguing. I think that's something you kind of see in those ranks when you only take two teams from each district. You get some really good first-round matchups.
Yes, I like that Ira Westbrook matchup on Friday at Sea City. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there. That's going to be 7:30 p.m. on Friday. I think that's probably the biggest six-man game we've got this week among our area teams.
Yeah, that's a big one. And the other thing that I'm kind of excited to see is kind of how that Region 3 Division 2 plays out, where you've got Throckmorton and then the old rivals Strawn and Gordon. All three are good teams that I think are hoping to make a deep playoff run. It's going to be fun to kind of see how that shakes out as well.
And with that, we're going to jump up to the 11-man level, Class 2A, Region 2, Division 2. And this is really one of our key regions where we think that we have a shot at getting a big country team all the way to Arlington, Dan. Hamlin at the top of that list, facing Olney at 7 p.m. Thursday in Breck. We've got the Cross Plains Buffaloes at 8-2 facing Petrolia at 6-3. That's 7 p.m. Friday in Breck. And also the Roscoe Plowboys at 1-9, a late addition to the playoffs with a win over Crosbyton last week, facing Quanah at 5-4. That is slated for 6:30 Thursday in Abernathy. Also, Santo at 6-4, facing Munster at 7-3, 7 p.m. Friday in Lake Worth. I like that matchup, Dan. Heiko at 3-7 versus Windthorst, 9-1, 7 p.m. Friday. That's going to be a home date for Windthorst. And then we've got the Albany Lions at 8-1 against Chico, 1-7, 7 p.m. Thursday in Graham. That's a beautiful stadium.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the Santo Munster game. That's probably the one in that bracket that I'm most looking forward to. This is a Santo team. This is a good number 3 seed. That's a tough draw. If you are a runner-up, getting that Santo team is a tough draw. As Albany, I think, would attest. That was a Santo team that had Albany on the ropes for a half into the third quarter and couldn't quite keep up with them in the second half. But this is a good, young, feisty Santo team. I'm excited to see what they can do against a Munster team. That's a really quality opponent as well. So I'll be interested to see how that one goes.
Well, as you know, teams that start the season off with a bunch of juniors, a talented junior class, well, guess what? By the time the playoffs roll around, it's really a talented – it's like having a group of talented seniors by that point. So this Santo team is maturing, it's getting better, and that's an interesting matchup against Munster. I'll tell you what. I like several of our team's chances to really do some damage. I like Cross Plains' chances. I like Albany's chances, and then of course you have to go with Hamlin is probably the regional favorite.
Yeah, and I really like the Cross Plains. They got a really, I think, a favorable matchup. You look at those records. Cross Plains at 8-2 playing a 6-3 Petrolia team, and you think maybe they're going to get challenged in the first round, and they could. But this is a Petrolia team that they got that 6-3 record really on the backs of a fairly light schedule. I would expect Cross Plains to kind of go ahead and take care of business in this first round. That is a tough defense for just about any team to play, but I think Petrolia is really going to struggle with it. But I think you're right. We've got several teams in this bracket. That Hamlin team, like we said, I think we both agree that that's a region favorite. Albany comes into this playoffs playing really, really well. And then Cross Plains is a team that, because of the way they play defense, that's a tough matchup, particularly for teams that haven't seen them yet. So I'm interested to see how this one goes. And I think Santo's one of those teams that if they can get past Munster, if they can pull off an upset in the first round, they're a dangerous one as well. So this is going to be a fun region for big country football fans. There's a lot of good football being played there by our teams.
The elephant in the room, Dan, is Windthorst at 9-1, and Windthorst gave Hamlin a real go during the regular season, with Hamlin winning that ball game 14-0. But that game, and Zach Duncan, former sports writer up at Wichita Falls, was up there for that ball game, and he believes that Windthorst had a real shot at winning that and would be troublesome for Hamlin in a possible rematch. So we'll see if Zach is right about that. And it does shape up that way. I think the two, in my opinion, the two favorites for the regional title would be Windthorst and Hamlin, with, in my opinion, the dark horses being Albany and Munster.
Yeah, and the good thing, I think, for fans of this classification in this region is that you would not get a Hamlin-Windthorst matchup until the state quarterfinals, until that region championship game. So sometimes the way the bracket works out, you end up with the two best teams on the same half of the bracket, and then you get kind of a matchup earlier than you want to get it. In this case, this matchup will not happen until the last possible occasion, which would be in a region for the region title. So I think that's kind of the one that everybody expects, that rematch between Hamlin and Windthorst. And I'd imagine if we get it, it'll be another really tight defensive matchup. But that's one definitely to pencil in. And I kind of agree with you on the favorites there. I think that Munster's is Munster and Albany are kind of the dark horses there. But I am eager to see kind of what Cross Plains can do. The one problem for Cross Plains is if they are able to get past Petrolia, is they've got Hamlin in the second round, so that's going to be a tough matchup. But like I said, this is a fun region. This is one that's definitely worth following if you're a big country football fan.
It's by no means certain that Hamlin gets out, because there's some pitfalls there. So they're just going to have to take care of business and execute the way they're capable of. I am concerned about the Pied Pipers' ring rust heading in there with one ball game in about the last 3 or 4 weeks. That's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge for them. And I think if you look offensively, they haven't really been firing on all cylinders for a while now. But that team has been so good defensively, they haven't had to. They've played a lot of games where they'll either shut out their opponent or hold their opponent to one score. And then in their last 3 or 4 games, they've had quite a few where they're winning with totals in the teens or in the low 20s. But this is a good football team. I think if they can get into the playoffs and get back into a rhythm, into a kind of a routine, into a normal weekly routine, watch out, because this is a team that has weapons offensively and defensively. They're as good as any team in this classification, in my opinion.
Okay, now we're going to stay in Class 2A, but we're going to jump up to Division 1, Region 1 2A, Division 1. And this is going to be well, all these regions are interesting. We say that they're interesting, but this one in particular, I think when you combine districts 4 and 3, 2 of ours going against each other, it's really something to watch. We've got San Saba, and I like this matchup, San Saba against a tough, physical Forsan team. That's 7:30 p.m. Friday in Wall. We've got Anson at 7-2 facing the Winners Blizzards at 4-6, 7 p.m. Friday in Roscoe. We've got the Hawley Bearcats at 8-2 facing Goldthwaite, which is a late entry into the playoffs. When Coleman got hit with COVID and had the rest of their season canceled, that opened the door for DeLeon and Goldthwaite to have a winner-take-all game Friday night for that number 4 seed Goldthwaite, taking that ball game in a wild one and qualifying for the playoffs. They get the Hawley Bearcats right off the bat, so they're going to have to earn their way to that area round if they're going to do it. That's 7 p.m. Thursday in Brownwood. And finally, we got the Cisco Lobos, perennial power, 7-3 versus a 5-5 Stanford team, 7 p.m. Thursday night in Clyde. And some interesting matchups here. I like San Saba Forsan. I would say that's probably the one that's probably going to have the microscope on it right off the bat amongst these ball clubs.
Yeah, and then, before we talk about the teams that are in the playoffs, I do want to spend a little bit of time on a team that we're not going to get to see in the playoffs. And you mentioned them, the Coleman Blue Cats. Just an unfortunate end of their season, having their last 2 weeks of the season canceled by COVID. In that quarantine into the playoffs, they had to cancel all fall sports. So that ended their football season prematurely, ended their volleyball season prematurely, ended their cross-country season prematurely. So just a really tough situation. But I do want to spend a little bit of time just talking about the job that Coach John Elder did with that squad. He had them playing really, really good defense. They were going to take the 3 seed out of that district. And unfortunately, just the circumstances don't give them the opportunity to finish what was really, I think, a very good rebound season for that program. These were kids that had faced a whole lot of adversity, had really overcome it, were playing really good football. I was really excited about the prospect of an Anson-Coleman rematch because those two played in the regular season. And unfortunately, we're just not going to get to see it. But I do want to give credit to those kids. That was a really good, gutty, just strong-willed group, and they deserve a lot of credit. And it's unfortunate that a career that with so much adversity ends with more adversity. But these kids, I know, are up to the task, and hopefully they have an opportunity at some point to understand and to celebrate what they did do this season, because I think that those kids got this program back on track, and I think they've got Coach John Elder's program in a position to where they can build from what they're doing now.
Okay, other matchups to take a look at in this bi-district cluster here of our ball clubs. Cisco and Stanford. If Stanford really brings its A game, if they really bring their A game, can they give Cisco a go? Because this team has had moments when they looked really good, really good, really good. But they're going to be facing a team from Cisco that just routed a great San Saba ball club. So can the Bulldogs hang here? Can they do it?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in this game. I'm actually going to be out there on Thursday for that one. Can they? That's the big question. If they play at their absolute optimal level, I think they've got some kids on the edges that are dangerous. I think they've got some kids that are hard guards for anybody at the receiver position, and a quarterback in Sean Holden who is a playmaker. The issue there is that they struggle to run the ball anyway. When you're talking about playing against that Cisco defense, it's hard to establish any running game against them. They're going to have to beat them through the air. And that's the question is can they give Holden enough time to find open receivers, and can the receivers get open? So that's going to be, I think, the big challenge there. But it's I think, a mildly interesting matchup there, though, because I do think the Stanford team, while they are 5-5 and very inconsistent, they have shown the ability this year that when they play well, they can beat good teams. So we'll see about that one. And the other matchup that I'm interested in is that Anson-Winters matchup, which is a rematch from the season opener, which Anson only won by 12 points. So while Winters is only 4-6, they play a style of football that's hard to defend, in a style of football that is really hard to get out and run if they're able to control the clock and control the ball. And then I think Winters has finished the season really strong. They're playing well right now. So I think that's kind of a under the radar, a pretty good matchup as well.
And with that, we're going to jump up to Class 3A. We're going to go to Region 2, Division 2. We've got two ball clubs that are still alive. They're going to be at the bi-district level. We've got a red-hot Eastland ball club at 7-3 facing Callisburg at 5-5, 7 p.m. Thursday in Decatur. And we've got the Comanche Indians facing Wichita Falls City View, 7 p.m. Friday in Joshua. And with Comanche, Dan, they do have some injury problems. The Hermsmeyer kid is out for the season, which is a big loss. But Coach Stephen Hermsmeyer does believe that the Indians, if they do bring their A game and play the kind of defense that they're capable of, and move that football on the ground and move the chains with that wing tee, that City View is a team. It's a game they can win and advance with if they do things right.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough matchup, but you'd expect that as the number 3 seed facing off with a runner-up. City View is a good team. I think that these are two pretty evenly matched teams. When you look at City View's losses, they've only really lost to really quality teams. You're talking about a 1-score loss to Jacksboro, which gives you a comparison point there with Comanche. They've lost to Windthorst, who we just talked about, by 1 score. So that tells you a little something about how good this team is. And then they lost to Holiday to close out the regular season. So this City View team has played some good teams, and their only losses really are to really quality teams. But the same is true of Comanche. Comanche's only losses this year are to Eastland and are to Jacksboro, and both those games are relatively competitive. So I think this is going to be one of the better, more competitive opening round matchups of any that we have in the big country. And I agree with you. I think that this Comanche team, if they can play at their highest level, can certainly win this game. They're going to have to do what you said. They're going to have to control the clock, control the football, play that brand of defense they were playing early in the season, and that gives them a chance. But this is a tough matchup. But like I said, when you go in as the number 3 seed, kind of all bets are off.
Eastland has put things together. They are playing the type of football that we thought that they would. They have won 7 straight ball games after an 0-3 start. They had the COVID issues. They had discipline issues they had to take care of. And now they've got this Callisburg team. I view Eastland as the single biggest threat to Gunter in this region. It would not stun me at all the way Baron Morton is throwing the football now and the way they're scoring points, that they actually get out of the region. They're capable of doing that. This team is, they're deadly. They're scoring about 60 points a night since that 0-3 start, and they can score on anybody. If they get 4 or 5 defensive stops, how do you beat these guys? If they get 4 or 5 defensive stops on you, you got a real problem.
Yeah, and this team's battle-tested too. They came out of what I think is a really tough district, having to have beaten, Jacksboro, Comanche, and Millsap to get out of that district undefeated. And then they played, obviously, a tough non-district schedule with some roster shakeups due to some different things. But I love the way this Eastland team's playing. We kind of always thought that this team had the ability that if they ever put things together to really make a deep run. I think they're in a position to do that now. But they got to do it. So it's going to be fun to see if they can if they can have the type of run that we think they're capable of. And it starts this week with that game against Callisburg.
We're going to jump over to Region 1. We're going to stay in Class 3A, Division 2, going to Region 1. But before we do that, we want to thank some of our sponsors, beginning with Capital Farm Credit, who brings you these Wednesday night podcasts free of charge throughout the school year. And also, for the love of the game broadcasting, our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of Classic Country, 1330 AM out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, K-Lakes, 93.5 FM out of Breck, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, KDAR 00 1430 out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game broadcasting. And also Phil Hill of the Abilene Realtors Group, big supporter of local athletics. If you're in the market, give Phil a call at 325-669-5153 or visit his website at philhillproperties.com. And finally, Jack's Road Boring out of Snyder, dirt sales and services with experience and service that you can count on. Larry Green is the man to call out there. Give him a shout at 325-575-8004. That is Jack's Road Boring in Snyder. And with that, Dan, it is time to take a look at some more Class 3A playoff pairings. Region 1, 3A, D2. Brady, the Bulldogs, facing Crane. Brady at 4-6, Crane with a lot of speed as always, 7-1. That's going to be Thursday at 7 p.m. in San Angelo. And also, we've got a forfeit. Ballinger has earned a forfeit win over Odessa Compass that had a COVID problem out there and had to forfeit that ball game. So the Bearcats will advance. We've got Kahoma at 6-3 facing always dangerous Canadian. Kahoma at 6-3, Canadian at 9-1. That's 7 p.m. Thursday in Tulia. And finally, we got the Bangs Dragons at 8-1 facing Tornillo, 3-3, 6:30 p.m. Thursday in Fort Stockton. And if you have ever driven down through West Texas, Fort Stockton is a haul. That's a long bus ride. You have bus lag for that ball game. That's a long way out there.
Yeah, that's a long one for Banks for sure. Looking at these games, on paper at least, do look like mismatches just because you've got some teams in these matchups, and all three of them, when you talk about a Crane, you talk about a Ballinger, Canadian, and Bangs, these are teams that are all really quality football teams that have a chance, I think, to go 2 or 3 rounds deep. I don't think any of those four will be challenged, certainly for Ballinger, which, like you said, is not playing this week. But I think all 4 of those teams have a chance, I think, like I said, to make deep playoff runs, and I don't think any of them will be challenged in their first round.
I'm interested to see how Kahoma does against Canadian, if they can get that ground game going and limit their turnovers. I'm interested to see if they can compete with this Canadian ball club, because this Kahoma team has showed some spunk all year. They've showed some fire, and I don't think they're going to go into that game intimidated at all.
No, and I like this Kahoma team. I think that it's a good quality team. I think that in some ways they've surprised people by being as competitive as they have. And they've played a tough schedule. So like you said, they're probably not going to be they're not going to come into this one feeling overmatched. When you talk about having played Idalou, Abernathy, and Lubbock Roosevelt, with those last 2 being very competitive football games. So I think they'll come into this one feeling like they have a chance. But unfortunately, just to me, Canadian's one of those teams in the state, in this region, that's just kind of on another level. Once they get to the playoffs, that's a team that you almost expect to make a run to at least a region final or state semifinals. And that's just a tough draw for Kahoma, with finishing 4th out of their district, just partly because they play in a really tough district. And Lubbock Roosevelt, I think, was a lot better than a lot of people expected them to be this year. But this is a Kahoma team that as 4 seeds go is a dangerous one. This is a team that's definitely a competitive number 4 seed.
All right, with that, we're going to jump over. We're going to stay in Class 3A, Region 1, Division 1. We've got some of our big programs in this, some that we're expecting to make some deep runs in the playoffs. We've got Clyde at 4-6 facing an always dangerous and speedy Pilot Point team at 7-3. That's 7 p.m. Friday at Memorial Stadium in Stephenville. We've got the Wallhawks at 7-3, always dangerous, facing a Boyd team, Dan, that gave them all they wanted last year. This should be a great matchup. That's at 7 p.m. Thursday in Dublin. We've got the Gymnet Indians, who we're expecting to do some real damage in postseason play. 8-1 facing Paradise, 7-3. That's going to go down at 7:30 p.m. Friday in Dublin. And then we've got Brock, 10-0, who we think might go all the way to Arlington, 10-0 against the early Longhorns, making their first playoff appearance since 2008. That's 7 p.m. Thursday in Stephenville at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, a really strong accomplishment for that early team and for Coach Price in his first year as the head coach there to make the playoffs. Unfortunately, the reward is a Brock team that may be historically good. This may be the best team that Brock has ever had, which is saying a ton given the fact that they've made several state championship game appearances and have a state title to their credit. I think the biggest matchup, in my opinion, the one that I'm looking most forward to is the one that you mentioned, that Wall-Boyd matchup. That was a really good game last year in the opening round of the playoffs. And Boyd this year, outside of two games, outside of their loss to Brock, and they had kind of an unexpected blowout loss to Pilot Point. Outside of those two games, Boyd has been very, very good. They've been basically they've been dominant outside of those two games, so they're going to get a good chance to test themselves against a Wall team that is also very good and does what it does very well with that flexbone system. So that's going to be a fun matchup. And I think a couple of these others are kind of low key, kind of under the radar, could be competitive. I'm not ready to say they will be, but I think that Clyde Pilot Point game could be more competitive than people think if Clyde shows up and plays its A game. This is a Pilot Point team that, outside of that blowout win over Boyd, has not looked as strong as they did last year. But they did show in that game that they have the capability of doing that when they put everything together. So if Clyde can come out and play really well, I think they can keep that one competitive into the second half, and then we'll see what happens there. And then Jim Ned Paradise, I would expect Jim Ned to handle Paradise, but this is a Paradise team that comes in having won their last 4 games to make the playoffs, including a big win over Whitesboro that kind of got them in. So this is a team riding a little bit of a wave. They started the season real well, won their first 3 non-district games, and then got off to a slow start in district, losing their first 3 games to Brock, to Pilot Point, and to Boyd. And then they got things back on track. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of keep that one competitive with Jim Ned. I would expect Jim Ned to handle them, but that one could be competitive if Paradise comes in and plays well.
Okay, some dangerous ball clubs in this region that are outside of our coverage area you have to keep an eye on. You always have to keep an eye on Shallow Water and Bushland. They're going to be in there, and they're going to present a problem for any of our ball clubs. If you run across these guys, it's going to be you're going to have to earn your way to the next round if you run into them.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I mean, if Wall, for instance, is going to make a deep run, they're going to have to either beat Pilot Point or Shallow Water in that regional round. That's going to be a tough one. And then you mentioned Bushland. That's a team that Brock handled in their opener, but this is a good team that kind of figured things out after a couple of struggles early in the season. So if Brock faces a Bushland again, I would imagine that Bushland team would love to have a rematch with the Eagles. I tend to think that Brock is just on another level, particularly in this region. But like you said, there are some toughies. Shallow Water, Bushland, Wall, Boyd, all these teams, could have Pilot Point. All these teams could have some say in how this region plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at Brock as the regional favorite. Clearly, I believe that they are going to get to Arlington. But there are some pitfalls in there. There are some dangerous stops. And Jim Ned's dangerous. And they're going to be in their side of the regional bracket. If Jim Ned wins a couple of ball games, could be looking at a Jim Ned Brock matchup, which would be really something to see.
Yeah, and Jim Ned was noticeably missing from my list. I just and that was a brain freeze on my part.
That's all right.
Jim Ned,
I got your back, man. I got your back. Don't worry about it.
No, I appreciate that, because that would have been a bad omission on my part, because I think Jim Ned is absolutely a threat in this region. I'm personally very excited about the proposition of a Brock Jim Ned matchup. I think that would be a really fun one for area fans.
It'd be fun to see if Jim Ned could get a couple of rounds deep there and make that matchup happen. Xavier Wishart against that Brock defense would be something to see right there, because Xavier Wishart's one of the best athletes in the big country, no question.
Yeah, and I think if they were to get to that level and have that matchup, I think that would be the biggest game in Jim Ned football since McCoy was coaching and quarterbacking the Indians. That would be a massive game for Jim Ned.
Yeah, that's the biggest game that they would have seen in 15 years at least.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about that proposition. I really hope we do get that matchup.
All right, now we're going to move up to Class 4A, Region 1, 4A, Division 2. We've got one team and one team only in this region. It is the Sweetwater Mustangs. Dan, they open up with Leveland. That's going to be 7 p.m. Friday in Sweetwater. Now, the two districts have agreed that their district champions would play at home. Sweetwater did win their district, so they're going to get Leveland in the Mustang Bowl. And what a better way to start off the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this is one that Sweetwater should handle. What I'm looking for is a little farther down the road. In their half of the bracket, they have an Iowa Park team that they would face in the third round. I've seen that Iowa Park team. I got to see them play Brock, and really they played Brock within one score in a very competitive football game. So I know how good that Iowa Park team is. That's a matchup that I think would be a really fun one. You're talking about a two very good offensive football teams if we get that one in the third round. So this should be a fun bracket for Sweetwater, I think, and they get off to they earn themselves a favorable matchup in that first round by virtue of their district championship. So I'm excited to see what they can do. I think that this Sweetwater team is very explosive, obviously offensively. They played better defense down the stretch, and I know that Coach McGee is very excited about this group. And I know he's been waiting a long time to get them into the playoffs and see what they can do. So I'm excited to see what they can do now that we're here.
Well, if Sweetwater takes care of business, which I believe they will, and get past Levelland, before Iowa Park even gets on the radar, in my opinion, they're going to have a very dangerous team from Salina in round 2 to deal with. Salina is always a problem in postseason play for anybody that comes across them. That's going to be. I know that Salina is only 3-4, but that means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. They played a monstrous schedule, and Sweetwater against Salina in the second round will be a great matchup. That will be a fun one and a diverse set of styles.
Yeah, no, that would be a tough matchup. I think that Sweetwater, after this first round, it gets tough quickly. You're talking about with the Salina potentially in the second round and Iowa Park potentially in the third. But this is a team that's been playing really well. They've got a couple of really nice wins under their belt in the way they were able to beat Greenwood and Monahans, which was playing really well down the stretch. So I'm excited to see what Sweetwater can do. I think that this is an exciting team. This is a team that can put up points on just about anybody. And if we do get that matchup with Iowa Park, expect some fireworks in that one. Those are two very good, very explosive offenses.
The good news for Sweetwater is that on the other side of the regional bracket are Graham and Aubrey, which are two of the better teams in the region. Both those ball clubs are really dangerous. Both of them come in with only one loss on the year. But guess what? You don't have to play both of them. Their paths are going to cross. They're going to eliminate. One of them is going to eliminate the other. So you don't have to deal with both of them if you want to get out of the region.
No, and this is quietly, I think, a very, very tough region. You talk about Sweetwater and Iowa Park, both just have, those one losses. Iowa Park may have one. You're talking about
two. Iowa Park's got 2.
Okay.
7-2.
Okay. You talk about Sweetwater and Iowa Park, two teams that between them have 3 losses. And then, like you said, on the other half, you've got Graham and Aubrey, which are both one-loss teams that are both very, very tough. So
yes.
You're talking about 4 teams, I think, that all have an opportunity to get out of this region if they play at their highest level. So I'm excited to see how this one goes. And there are lots of matchups that would kind of be dream matchups if Sweetwater can get them. I think they'd be really, really fun, good, high-scoring, exciting offensive football.
It's a tough road out of this region. If you're going to get out of here, you're looking to have to beat Salina, probably Iowa Park, and then either Aubrey or Graham. And Graham is flat out tough this year. So, man, what a region. It's a very good Sweetwater ball club, but they've got the work cut out for them. This is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, if they're going to get out of this region, they will have earned it. It's going to be tough. Like you said, it gets tough quickly. They're going to have tough games from the second round on. And I really like the Sweetwater team. They're coming in this with a lot of momentum. They've won 7 games in a row, won their district title outright. They've got one of the area's best quarterbacks in Leo Halsey, a couple of really explosive receivers in Harrison Foster and in Darian Carr. Some really nice running backs. I love this offense. If they can play defense and make enough stops, this is a team that can beat just about anybody on a given day. But they're going to have their work cut out for them, like you said. That's a tough region and a tough road, but it should be fun to see what Coach McGee's team can do.
All right, we're going to remain in Class 4A now. We're going to go over to Region 2, however. This is Division 1, and we've got 2 ball clubs heading into the playoffs in that bracket. We've got the Brownwood Lions at 4-5 facing a very dangerous Kennedale team at 8-0, and that's going to be on Kennedale's home field. That's 7:30 Friday in Kennedale. Then we've got the Stephenville Yellow Jackets at 5-5 facing a Fort Worth Benbrook ball club at 6-4, 7 p.m. Friday at Fort Worth's Farrington Field. One thing in the favor of Brownwood and Stephenville, they're not going to face anything in the postseason that they haven't already seen in that district of theirs. That is a monstrous district. They are prepped and ready for postseason play. They're not going to see anything new, no matter who they face.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, they're coming out of a district with Waco La Vega and Midlothian Heritage, two top 10 caliber teams. So nothing they've seen in the playoffs will overwhelm them or be significantly better than what they've seen to this point. Unfortunately, Brownwood is kind of a casualty of what I think is one of the tougher districts in the state at that division. They're getting a really tough go in the first round against a Kennedale team that is just outstanding. That's going to be a very, very tough matchup for the Lions, especially given the fact that they've had some injury issues to end the season.
Yeah, I mean, if Brown was playing in any other district, they're not going to be a 4 seed.
No,
If they're in any other district, they're not going to be a 4 seed and be stuck with a road game at Kennedale to start the playoffs. It's just a geographic disadvantage for them.
Definitely that, and like I said, they've had some injury issues. They played Waco La Vega to end the season very shorthanded. I mean, several of their best players weren't able to play in that one, and unfortunately, it looks like some of those guys will remain out into the playoffs. So that makes that matchup even doubly tough. The Stephenville-Benbrook matchup, I'm excited about. I think that could be an interesting one. Stephenville is about as good a number 3 seed as you're going to find. Their record at 5-5. Very deceiving. They've played an extraordinarily difficult schedule, both in the non-district portion and district. And this is a team that, like Sweetwater at a higher level, is going to put points on everybody. This is as good an offense as you will find at that level. They have some defensive issues. They've had some this year. We'll have to see if they can kind of fix some of those going into the playoffs. But when you can score the way they do, they're always dangerous. And I'm excited about this matchup. I think it'll be interesting against a runner-up in Benbrook.
Just not an easy road for anybody. There's so many good ball clubs. If Stephenville gets past Benbrook, and I believe the Yellow Jackets are going to get past Benbrook, they have a very good chance to win this ball game. But in this bracket, man, this is a tough region. If Stephenville does get past Benbrook, and I expect the Yellow Jackets will, more than likely they're going to have Argyle in the area around it. So it gets tougher and tougher and tougher. And then at the bottom of that bracket, you got Waco La Vega in there. You got both La Vega and Argyle on your side of the regional bracket. That's tough. Brownwood facing Kennedale on Kennedale's home field, and if they win that ball game in the area around, chances are they're going to get Melissa, and Melissa is one of the best ball clubs in Class 4A, especially in this region. There's no question.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. If Stephenville can get past Benbrook, and I think you and I both believe they will win that game. A second round matchup with Argyle that's brutal. This is an Argyle team that really handed it to La Vega early in the season. Argyle is always very, very good, and this year maybe one of the better teams that they've had. So that's what Stephenville's looking at. Brownwood's got the matchup with Kennedale right off the bat. So like you said, a very tough region. Heritage is in there as well. I mean, this is just a really tough region with a lot of teams that have had very, very strong seasons. So I think both of our teams are facing an uphill climb, but once you get to this point, anything can happen, and that's why you want to get into this bracket and especially this year where you've got kind of an added layer of uncertainty with COVID and things where, if certain things happen, you can advance to the playoffs without having to face some of these teams. So this is one of the most stranger years that we've had in that regard, certainly, but I'm excited to get to see what some of these teams will do. And now that we're in the playoffs, I know that this is something that everyone's looking forward to, and it's always a fun time of year. And generally speaking, you're going to have some upsets. It's just a matter of if, or a matter of when. Generally, not if. So maybe our teams can be on the winning end of some of those. So we'll just have to see.
Okay, we're going to stay in Class 4A, Division I. We're going to swing out to Region 1. We've only got one ball club at the Division I level still alive heading into the playoffs. In Region 1, we got the Big Spring Steers at 4-3. They're going to be facing El Paso Riverside, 4-1. That's going to be 7 p.m. Friday in Pecos. And I tell you what, Dan, West Texas really got hit hard by COVID because you've got so few options. If somebody gets hit by COVID, I mean, who do you play? Somebody's going to have to drive 200 miles to play, and as a result, we got ball clubs that are 4-3, 4-1, 3-3. COVID really wrecked West Texas's regular season.
Yeah, especially El Paso, where El Paso started their season much later than everybody else because of COVID. They didn't play really a non-district schedule at all. They jumped right into district. So, like you said, Riverside comes into this one with 5 games under their belt, and then Big Spring probably got hit as hard as any team in our area, just in terms of seeing games kind of taken from them off the schedule. So. I think this is going to be an interesting game. Big Spring, when fully healthy, is explosive offensively. Gabriel Baez is a kid at the quarterback position, a very good dual threat kid, a playmaker. They've got some really nice receivers. They're not running the ball as much as they have in the past. They're kind of relying more on that passing game. But this is a Big Spring team that has taken, I think, a fairly sizable step forward from what they've been the last few years, particularly on that offensive side. So I think they've got a shot in this one. If they can go out and play well, I think they've got a shot to get to the second round of the playoffs, which I think would be a pretty good accomplishment for this group.
And with that, it's just about time to wrap up the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you that if you're a YouTuber, to please hit that subscribe button. Now, most people watch these videos on our website, which is fine. But if you're a YouTuber, please hit that subscribe button. Also, we have 3 separate subscription packages here at BigCountryPreps.com. We've got a monthly for $5 a month. We got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we've got a yearly subscription, 12 months, where we knock that price down to $3 a month. $36 for a full year of Big Country High School athletic coverage.
We'd also like to remind you that if you see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, it is available for just $7. You can click on that small shopping cart icon to the bottom right, follow the prompt, and purchase as many of those as you would like. But if you've been scrolling around the site, you've probably noticed that we take a whole lot of photos, and all of those will end up at some point in our Big Country Preps photo archive. So make sure you check that out. So we take a whole lot of photos, and that's something we're really proud of here at BigCountryPreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.